Hello, in this video we're going to look on the mapping modes inside the view, and we will kind of simplify it because mapping modes inside the view is using everywhere. You can from shape of the procedure terrain to all other elements, but we'll look on some simplified way to understand them, how to easy to use it and when. So right here, view, before we start jump in, we need to understand that in a view is using standard mapping mode with is a Cartesian coordinate system, and you'll notice Z by default is up representing. So in some other 3D applications, Z it will be away from the camera or away from this, and Y will represent up position. So this is kind of understand Z, Y, and X, and it's important when you import or export some elements to this. So, okay, till we start this, let's go create a standard terrain. And right here we have one we created. Let me shrink down so we can observe on our preview. We also take our main camera and bring slightly up, and let's look down a little bit. So I can see this element was merging with our terrain. And as we're looking on the preview, let's pre-render. You can see we don't have it any seams. It's all come together, and the reason because the mapping modes on our ground and our terrain are match. If we're going to open our terrain, actually not editor, let's go and material editor. And the reason why, because it's a little bit easy to see how the mapping modes will work with this. So we can see we have a world standard set for our terrain. We'll go on a ground, and it's world standard as well. So let's go ahead and look what mode we have it. And you'll notice we have two main categories, world or object based. In each of them have it standard, cylinder, spherical, parametric. In most cases I found I'm using just a standard or parametric, and in very rare occasion maybe cylinder and spherical. And spherical, mostly if I created rocks with displacement, I may use it this spherical type of the mapping there, but it's not very often. So the overall, again, standard system, it's representing coordinates of the X and Y, and a Z represent vertical elevation, so it's very basic. Cylinder, it will X represent distance on vertical ones, and again Z will be flattened, and a spherical will represent a distance of vertical axis, and Y will represent angle. So it's all these different, how say they don't. And parametric is very important because this mode will coordinates automatically adjust in a way that will be independent on the size of the object, but will take the mapping and it's map it to the size of the object. And it's important when we start using like a high field displacement or some other mapping that we maybe produce from other application and import. And we'll look on this one in a second. So also we have the same apply to object. The one will use the world coordinates or mapping to the all our world, the ground based, or object, it will be on object specifically. So let's look very fast in Photoshop. Just jump out here. And here example our image. So if I have this image and I say, hey, I want to do the standard mapping, but you notice it's a little bit smaller than my object or my all size, this is what will happen. And it's by default, even we assuming it's going by resolution of 1, and I'll show you the reason why it will be different a bit. But overall, just assuming all default, and you just said, I want image this mapped by standard, by the object, and it will be just styling. Just take a same, whatever, and proportional, and you notice here is width is different from height, so it will go this way. If you do same thing and you says, hey, I want to put this as object, for example, parametrical or other ones, and it will use it object coordinates, so it will actually take and stretch that object. So it's actually will, okay, let's go right here. And let me adjust just a little bit. It does not stretch proportionally, okay? It will stretch to fill all of them. This is kind of need to understand on sometimes if you have an image and you maybe want to place it on side of the box or whatever, and you use it parametrical for the object, it will scale with object, which kind of nice does, but it will give you distortion, so you need to be careful when you do this. Okay, so right here is our image, and you know what, I have this image, I made it, and we can take this image and just go ahead use it as our example in a view. It will help us to map it. So right here we'll select our terrain, and we'll go switch to the mapped picture, select the picture what we've done, and you can see as a world standards it applied to this. So let's go ahead now to the ground, and we'll select our ground, actually world standard as well. Let's go to mapped picture, and at this point if we render, they all should match very well, because the mapping mode on both of them is exactly the same. So what's happening if we switch, for example, on the terrain, and we'll switch from standard to object parametric. Remember, now modes will be going against the object X, Y, but beside this, it will be parametric. So it will take this image, and you can see what's happening. It's actually stretching this. So let's go to the main camera. We'll switch just to the top camera. And let's go just right here, zoom out, and we'll put it up. So you can see what's happening with our camera. It's kind of put it on top. Again, we have it a little bit darker because we're going way out of this. But same from here. You can preview. Let's go pre-render. And you can see we applied our image. So it's take one single image and it's stretching. This is we could change some of the sizes of this if we're going inside the terrain material editor on terrain. If we do on a scale, for example, 0.5, let's do half scale, and you can see we can manage and manipulating scale on our procedure terrain. So it's not necessary if you think that your terrain, your mapping mode is too big or something, you can always go and modify with the scales or other, so you have access also to this. Okay, let's go back to 1. And again, the other ones, we have an object standard, which will apply, you can see tiling, similar what I showed before, it will tile kind of image, so it won't be just take this image and stretch to all sides of the object, but that mode there overall is different from what you have at world object. So, and they not necessarily will match. Okay, you cannot kind of see here, but the mode is different, so the sizes is quite a bit different between our original and the ground, and the scale and sizes is different, so they won't match. Matching mode is kind of important if you try to take image and apply as a mapping mode or any other mapping mode, and you want to be sure your overall terrain and multiple background mountains matching together. You maybe want to go switch to the world standard or world parametric type of the mapping. So in this case, all these scales and everything is matching. So speak about that. Sometimes we don't necessarily need to match them. So if we go back, and you know what, let's go to switch this to something else, less distracting. So we'll just go on the grass. So what's happening when we want to use the actual parametric modes on our terrain? And it's happening when we want to map it, for example, high field, and I use it sometimes this from like world machine when I create high field and everything. So let's go ahead right here. We have our object open. And for example, I want to map to my object the high field that I created previously. For this, we'll go open. Let's go, you know what, disable edgeless, so we will have it no edges. And we'll go inside the picture and open. Okay, we navigate here and we have it our field, high field. Okay, so let's go select high field one, click OK. We'll set all the way 100% to the pictures, and let's, before we do this, one thing what I want to do, it is verified, because the hour scales is 2000 by 48 and it's a little bit lower, so let me do, okay, cancel here, and I'll just want to bring a little bit resolution higher, so at least we have a nicer preview on this one. Okay, we'll go to image again, preload it, let's go navigate, high field. Okay, 100% to the picture, click OK. And let's go click OK one more time. And we'll just switch this to some color. Okay, right here we applied, and by default, you notice when we apply high field, it did use it mapping mode of procedural from the image, so it's by default. Okay, let's go to bring our camera just a little bit closer. There you go. Okay, let's go ahead and open material editor for this terrain. So what's happening if I am going to select and I want to create another material, put it on top of this. And as default, I'm going to just select one more material. And I'm going to select mapped picture. We'll just navigate same, and I have one flow just like this. Notice what's happening with the world standard. Again, we'll take all coordinates and going this way. It will switch to object standard. We can still navigate, but we have a problem with our scales and everything. So if we want this image the perfectly fitting our size, and that's what we've done before, we want to be sure it's using object parametric. And you can see as we're using object parametric, it is applying very well to size what we needed. Remember I mentioned about stretching, kind of important, and I find out because when you work on with a terrain is square. So if you saw the sizes was 2048 by 2048. So I want to be sure if I'm applying my image on the top with it will match sizes of my terrain. If not, the stretching could be going very bad or wrong. So for example, if we go right here and we change stretchings, you can see how now it is start repeating from the size going right here. Okay, let's go re-render so we can preview closer. You can see how it is going on a white element. Okay, example, if we're going, let's restore Y to 1. I'll just do X maybe. Right there, and you can see, of course it's on the middle, but we start repeating on the sides. So be sure your map can be different size, but it is needed match the proportions of your terrain if you do with procedurals on the terrain. At least on the areas where we can observe. If you do like tree trunk and you want to apply procedures to the tree trunk, it's fine as long again edges can match together or other things. Otherwise you will start having the seams visible as well. Again, procedural or this mapping modes, it's not can apply not just to the image itself. Remember, it will apply also to the alpha, to transparency, and to other elements. An example, if we're creating a new layer, and let's go, for example, going with the ecosystem. Okay, we'll go to add item. Let's go add plant, and we'll just add a plant tree, the pine tree. We'll We'll go with density, and let's go use the variable density. We'll go edit the function for variable density, and we'll go to projected texture map. Okay, right here, select one. We'll connect this to our density. And inside, remember what I says, you don't necessarily, you can use it. We can use it for our projection. And mapping mode, one thing, what I was mentioning, we look on the materials. This, we still have it with materials, but if you're looking below, we have it also mapping mode. Be sure those mapping modes is kind of matching if you're using different ones. But right now, we'll just leave it automatic, so we don't need it flat faces. We could use it flat for this case. We'll leave it here. And let's go ahead back to our mode. Notice we have it world standard. And if we do populate now, it's won't match. It's kind of all over the place because remember, we don't need used world standard. We want used object parametric, so it will be matching. So now if we populate, it's populate in the areas, white areas where we want it. Okay, let's go to take scaling, reduce scaling. Okay, kind of hard to observe where they're going. Let's go back to our density. Okay, and I think the reason is why we actually don't want populate on white. White is where they're going, just so we can visible, we just inverse. And this is what's happening, it will populate just on the white areas. If you remember, we'll avoid black areas. And we'll go populate, and now we can absorb those white ones areas a little bit better. For example, washout or some other one. But you can see how we're using same with the mapping mode. We can use ecosystem population, material distribution, size, and other ones. But overall, this is a mapping modes. And how I say, I don't want to go too much in complex how they work or more explaining. You can open documentation if you want, look there. Purpose of this video, just give you very simple to look what mode is important to use when. So again, world standard you can use if you have a procedural terrains and you have multiple maybe mountains going there, will going very well. The object parametric on a terrain, it's useful used in this case when you have a specific image and that you want to map it, your terrain, to this specific image or location or distribution. Like if you have a map of something and you want to place it, some elements based on that map, then you want to use it object parametric in this case, map it. But again, be sure the size of the what you're mapping, it is matching resolution and the proportions of your terrain or where you're mapping your object. Okay, so right here's our terrain, and we can actually take our main camera. Let's bring it one closer. Right here. And here's our render of what we just kind of look on this, on the distribution and using all of this element. Well, thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, please let me know on YouTube or send me email or other contacts. And your support on Patreon is greatly appreciated. Thank you for all your help.